It's time to bring out the BetterWorldian in all of us. Welcome to BetterWorldians Radio with your hosts, Ray, Mary Sue, and Gregory Hansel. BetterWorldians Radio inspires you with the people and ideas that are making the world a better place. You'll hear how small acts can make a big difference every day. Now, here are Ray, Mary Sue, and Gregory.
Hi, welcome to BetterWorldians Radio. BetterWorldians Radio is a weekly broadcast whose mission is to uplift and inspire you to make the world a better place. I'm Ray Hansel, joined today by my co-host, Mary Sue Hansel. BetterWorldians Radio is brought to you by BetterWorldians Foundation and is co-hosted by the family team that created the popular social game on Facebook called A Better World. A Better World rewards players for doing good deeds while helping to raise money and awareness for charities. To date, over 40 million good deeds have been done in a better world by more than 4 million people in over 100 countries. Today on BetterWorldians Radio, we have a special Valentine's Day episode with the Phillie Phanatic, or actually, perhaps I should say, a very good friend of the Phillie Phanatic. Joining us today is the man who's played the Phanatic for nearly 30 years, Tom Burgoyne. Tom is here to discuss his book, Pheel the Love, with co-author Evan Marcus. A certified Philadelphia sports nut, Tom started his life as the Phillie Phanatic in 1989 as a backup and became the Game Day Phanatic in 1994. Tom not only appears as the Phanatic at all home games, but has traveled around the world bringing the Phanatic's special brand of humor to sports fans everywhere. Tom's a prolific author and energetic speaker who encourages people to reach for the stars and make every moment count. Evan Marcus has spent the last 25 years working hand-in-hand with leaders, helping them to clarify their strategy, build powerful teams, and overcome barriers to success. A true teacher at heart, he teaches executives on an individual and group basis. As a sought-out keynote speaker, Evan is on a mission to transform the world through business. Hi, Tom. Hi, Evan. Thanks for joining us today on BetterWorldians Radio.
Hey, Ray. Hi, Mary Sue.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. You guys are going to love the show, and our listeners are going to love listening to it. Tom, as the Phillies Phanatic, let me begin by asking you, you're all about love. So I'm curious, what is it like to be inside that big green suit and experience the reactions people have to seeing you in person?
Yeah, it's hard to explain, Ray. This will be my 29th season coming up, so I've been doing it for a long time, and it never gets old because that really is the best part of the job, that reaction that people have when they come encounter with the Phillie Phanatic for the first time. It's, sometimes I liken it, there's an hysteria to it. I love looking at old clips of when the Beatles came to America and, they were always being chased, down the road by adoring fans. And sometimes I feel like the Phanatic is like the fifth Beatle. It's just fun. It's exciting to see the emotions, people laughing. It's, they're in amazement. They're giddy. They cry sometimes. It's really a very magical thing.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I think the Phillie Phanatic is probably one of the most popular mascots in all of sports. At least I've heard that around the country.
Yeah, well, longevity helps. This will be actually the 40th season altogether, and you're right. It seems like the Phanatic gets a lot of love, from the broadcasters when visiting teams come to town, the national, shows like ESPN and Fox Sports. They always seem to be showing clips of the Phanatic, so it's kind of been a real loving experience, actually, all these years.
Now, that's interesting. Now, we're actually highlighting this show during the week of Valentine's because of the book that you wrote, Pheel the Love. So why don't I ask you to begin with, Tom, how you approach love every day?
Yeah, well, there's a word Evan and I use in the book, and we use it a lot when we do our talks, and that's purpose. And that, the Phanatic is purposefully loving people. And I think that started right from the beginning. Bill Giles was our president and chairman for a long time. But when the Phanatic came out, he was kind of the guy in charge of promotions. And Dave Raymond was the first Phanatic. And, I think the idea of just bringing the Phanatic to Philadelphia was to make games more fun. The team had some losing seasons back there in the early 70s, and by the mid 70s, we were starting to put it together. But Bill was always looking to, I think, incorporate a little bit more fun at the ballpark. So I just think right from the beginning, it's just in the Fanatics DNA to go out and kind of interact with people, make the game experience more fun, go out into the community, reach people that way. It's just very purposeful, and that's one of the messages that Evan and I bring to businesses, that it doesn't happen by accident. You really to be kind and loving, sometimes it takes purpose.
Now, I'm reminded we had Pat Croce on a few months back speaking about mindfulness, but of course we also talked to him about his experience as an owner of the 76ers, and if you recall, there were some challenging times when he came in there to sort of turn that team around. So I think he brought some fun back into the actual stadiums to try to bring that experience along while the team was coming along to some of its championship years.
That's a great example. I mean, I think excitement and fun usually leads to love.
Right. Well, now let me shift gears here a little bit, Evan. Where did the idea come from for the book Pheel, Pheel, Pheel the Love?
Well, it really came out of conversation. A lot of the book has come out of conversation, and I was meeting with Tom, and I didn't know him at the time, and I didn't know that much about the Phanatic, and we just kept telling stories, and so many of the stories were what you just experienced him sharing about, just anecdotes of how many people just love the Phanatic. And I would bring him to clients of ours, and these are normal-looking adults, people with executive positions, and here we are in front of the Phanatic, and they're all like googly eyed and going, "Oh my God, I love the Phanatic." And we weren't sure what the message was at first, but one day, and I believe this is a godsend, we were having these conversations, and Tom, again, was telling another story about running into a waitress in a restaurant. She found out what he does for a living, and she's going on and on about how much she loves the Phanatic. And that's when the light bulb went off, and I realized this is about love. And I thought about, my work with organizations and leadership teams, and the question came to us, what company wouldn't want their customers, team members, community to love them with that same passion, zeal, that pure, genuine love and loyalty that people have for the Phanatic? And there really is nothing greater that an organization could accomplish than to have that kind of love. And so that became the whole inquiry of the book, what creates that love?
That's interesting. Now, our experience, myself and Mary Sue, we had built a company up that we took public over the years, and it gradually grew from a small cluster of people to thousands of people and to operations around the Northeast. So, keeping that together, I think love was frequently the glue, because our customers loved us, we loved them. Our employees, we shared the same feelings for us as we felt for them. And I think that was a good portion of it. And as that love grew, I think some of the people that really didn't have that sort of experience, they just kind of peeled away. And what was left at the core of it all was that central feeling of love that was shared among all the business's constituents. So we can relate to what you're talking to. So tell me, what's your definition of love, Evan?
Hey, one thing before we get there, you made a good point, and we learned it too, that when we started asking ourselves what creates love, and the story you just shared is at the core, in our first principle, we call it the big smooch, love them first. Clearly you and Mary Sue were loving the people who work for you. Like, the love has to come from the source, typically the people who are running or leading an organization, and that's where the love has to come from first. If people want that type of love and loyalty generated in their culture, it's not going to come unless we're genuine and pure in our love for the organization, the people, the product, our customers. Like, we're genuinely loving, and so I think you kind of just told our story.
Oh, really? I didn't mean to do that, so I'm sure there's a lot more to tell. But we actually did experience just the opposite. That occasionally people would ask us to consult, not sort of the kind of work that you do, but more on a tactical level for customer service, et cetera. And occasionally we'd run against people who would say, well, how about if we just throw some balloons out here? And this is in a cinder block building, okay, with almost like a boiler room operation. And maybe we'll show that we love them. I said, you think that balloons and a pizza is going to actually do that? You know, I mean, you really, this has to be played out every single day in every single way that you can. I mean, am I on target with that, or what do you think?
You just keep going. You're doing the whole book. One of our principles is called Make Every Encounter Count. And that's all about, again, Tom can tell us. So we tell a lot of stories. The Phanatic is kind of our parable in the book. But this idea of, one, what you just said, it has to be genuine. This isn't some tactic or strategy, a new gimmick. Like you said, it's not about balloons. It's really about love. And so to make every encounter count, you know, we started to realize that the Phanatic does this one encounter at a time. And, Tom, you want to tell one of the stories about it, or I could keep on going if you want?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, there are gazillions of stories, you know, every time the Phanatic encounters somebody. And I guess I'll flip it a little bit in when it really hit me, and that was, you know, I really haven't missed many home games here in Philadelphia. I've been lucky enough to kind of stay away from injury, and, you know, I've done, you know, all the home games. But I did have a bad back flare-up a few years back, and my backup got a chance to be the guy in the costume at a Phillies game. It was his first game, and my back wasn't good enough to get in the costume, but I was able to come to the game and help him. I wanted to be here for him. And it was really interesting to see, you know, normally when I'm in costume, I'm high-fiving, I'm hugging, and, you know, I go from one person to the next, always on the move. And it was really neat. I remember one episode, and it happens all the time, but a group of girls, 3 girls, were kind of giddy, and they were excited to go see the Phanatic, and they got up the courage to go over to the Phanatic, and the Phanatic saw the 3 girls. They gave me their camera. I took a picture of these 3 girls, and then the Phanatic, you know, did what I would have normally done, just kind of keep moving. Right. And I watched these 3 girls and the reaction. You know, after they got the picture, they went over to their other friends and they were showing the pictures, and they just were giggling and laughing and looking at their picture. And it's just like, well, that's just one encounter, and that's what happens when the Phanatic, you know, stops, takes 5-10 seconds to make a positive experience. And we just thought, boy, that is a great lesson in the business world too. It's for people to, you know, just take a break and be there present for somebody who might, you know, need an ear, or for someone to be there for them. So that was just kind of one of our ways that we highlighted that.
That's terrific. That's
and great. One of the things I have to give Tom credit for is I've gotten to know him, and going back to that word he used, purposeful. I know that, you know, when he's out there, just from watching him and listening to him, he's not really just focused on himself. He understands that even though he's going to have thousands of encounters, that moment with that person is special to them. And in his heart, he does his best to make it special for that person. And honestly, I believe it's part of Tom's intention in his heart that translates out and creates those special moments for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Well, what you talk about this, Evan, in the book. What do you call the DNA of love? How does that apply to business?
Well, what we started, again, we were on an inquiry of what creates this love. And as we were, you know, like scientists exploring love, you know, through many of Tom's stories, we started to break them apart and kind of deconstruct and go, what actually happened? And we came up originally, we realized, oh, wait, there's a process here, and he's doing it naturally, but we could break it down, and we thought this would help people in business understand how to translate the concept into action. So the D stands for decide, and that means kind of like you and Mary Sue do. At some level, there's a decision by the people individually or as a culture to decide we are going to be loving in the world. It doesn't just happen by accident. It may be subtle, but you have to make that decision. That's the purposeful part. So that's the D. And that can be like over the length of the life of the company, or it can be in a specific moment. Like, you know, you're in your office, you're working, you have to get a lot done, and someone comes in and says, hey, Ray, can you help me a second? And we've all experienced this. Like in your heart, you're going, oh, my God, I just got to get this stuff done. I don't have time for this person. But in that moment, and it may be very quick, you're making a decision, I'm going to be loving to this person. The second, the N is notice. You have to notice opportunities where you can be loving. And that could be, oh, here's that situation. Someone needs help. It could be someone in the organization you see that is down that day. It could be an opportunity with a customer where maybe something didn't do well, and here's a chance to express the love. And the A stands for the act. You can make the decision, you can notice the opportunity, but are you willing to act on that love impulse in that moment? So that's kind of the trilogy of how do you actually do the love. Make the decision to be loving, notice opportunities to do it, and A, take the action. And I got to lead, Tom's going to tell you a story about a guy named Frat Guy, because this story is one of many that really contains the D, the N, and the A perfectly. Do you mind if Tom tells the story?
No, go right ahead.
Yeah, our first principle, and you mentioned it earlier, Ray, is you got to love them first. It's the big smooch. And I guess it is funny. Evan and I were working on this book a year or so ago, and I'm in the crowd. I'm in the costume. I'm literally in the crowd. I'm in the middle of a row, and I hear a guy from behind me yell, "Hey, Phanatic, show me some love." And I thought it was funny, because here Evan and I had been, immersed in the loving culture while we were writing this book. And I turned around, and there was a guy. Evan mentioned, we call him Frat Guy in the book, but because he looked like he just walked off of the set of Animal House. A little heavy set, his belly protruding a little over his belt line. He didn't have anything in his hand, no beer in his hand, which was key, because I had to notice that a little bit for how the Phanatic shows love. And so I kind of got out of the crowd, went up the aisle, and this guy's got his hands out, for a big hug. And instead of hugging him, the Phanatic, not me, because I would never do this.
No,
right?
you'd never do it. Of course not.
The Phanatic grabbed the bottom of his shirt and pulled it right over his head, and threw the shirt into the next section. And now that Frat Guy is standing there with no shirt, but with a big smile on his face, and we hugged it out. So Evan and I talked. There are a lot of ways that the Phanatic shows love. We don't recommend this when we give our corporate talk, of course, but
no.
But it's just one of the ways, I guess, that there is a decision there. Certainly, how are we going to approach this loving guy? You have to notice little things. Certainly, if he had a beer in his hand, I wouldn't have been able to toss his shirt over. But and then, of course, the Phanatic acted on it. So, and that's what he does best. He acts on a lot of these, loving opportunities.
Well, you have a great opportunity to do that. You're in that costume. You're in that situation. It's perfect. I think on a corporate level, I guess we tried to look for more systemic things. So we had a Love Customers program, which we did on a regular basis for Valentine's Day, at Christmas, and what have you, just to reach out and sort of in some ways, we really love you, we're crazy about you, and that type of thing. And that was, but then, of course, you had to deliver on that good on a regular basis. But I think that created some of the icing on the cake. And then on the employee level, we had a great performances thing. People would get their names up as the rep of the month or whatever on a regular basis. So we did all that. So we brought that system in on a regular basis because it was harder to take the spontaneity. But you're right. You do still have to reach out, and if people and reach to people and touch them and talk to them on a regular basis. Otherwise, it doesn't come out as genuine. It just doesn't come across as authentic.
And Ray, your point about systemic, our interest in organizations, go and speak to them, but it's really about creating loving cultures. And that is, when we say make every moment, every encounter count, it is that daily systemic cultural practices and processes that come together that create a love culture. And ultimately, that's where we feel we can have influence in leaders who say, how do I translate this into the daily actions that lead to a love culture? One of the people we highlight is Doug Conan, who had been the CEO of Campbell Soup, and he wrote a beautiful book called Touch Points. And talk about, every day this guy would write 20 or 30 handwritten thank you notes to people within the organizations, customers. And every day he would strap on his sneakers. He's wearing a suit with, dress shoes. He put his sneakers on. And he would, again, here's that word purposeful, he would purposely go out and walk around the organization, not just to, give tasks, but purposely to bump into people, because he knew it was those kind of sacred moments where you can really influence and share love in the world. Mm-hmm. And So we always thought that's a really good example.
Well, that's really great. That's really good to hear. We're going to talk more with Tom and Evan in a moment, but right now I'd like to take a brief break and tell our listeners a little bit about our game on Facebook called A Better World. A Better World encourages habits of love, goodness, positive mindsets, and giving to social causes to make a positive impact in the world. Players do things like sending hearts and love, expressing gratitude, sharing acts of kindness, and random acts of kindness, sending get-well notes to real-world sick children, and so much more. Each month, we also partner with a different charity, companies like Operation Warm, Cradles to Crayons, Veterinary Foundation, and Northern Home for Children locally, just to name a few. And we challenge our players to do a certain number of good deeds within the game themselves. When they do, we release funds to our charity partner of the month. Most recently, that was our partner of Nurturing Minds in Africa, a nonprofit that provides quality education to girls in need in Tanzania. This month, we're partnering with Experience Camps. They offer a one-week camp program for children whose parents, siblings, or a loved one has died. And we're challenging our players to complete this month 150,000 good deeds, and when they reach that goal, we will release funds to send kids to camp. You can find out more at betterworld.com, but let's now get back to our conversation with Tom Burgoyne, Evan Marcus, co-authors of Pheel the Love, and my co-host, Mary Sue Hansel.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Evan.
Hi, Mary Sue.
I just love hearing all those wonderful stories. You bring so much happiness and positivity wherever you go. I wanted to talk, you touched a little bit about, loving them first, and then I wanted to talk about one of your other 7 principles, which is making it fun. And you talked a little bit about that, but let's hear more about how you bring that into business, Evan. I mean, can you go overboard with that? I mean, how do you do it tastefully?
Well, that's a great point, and it kind of goes back to the DNA point you were talking about. I'm a big fan of it. I'm sure some of your listeners have taken the Myers-Briggs profile or DISC profile. And
yes, I've taken it.
What you start to find out, you're familiar with it?
Yes, I've taken it, and our old organization used to take it.
So, what you start to find out is there's appropriate ways to interact with different styles of people. And
right.
Someone who's more effusive and outgoing versus someone who's more introverted. And so what we learned is that love and fun has to be appropriate and fit the person that you are sharing it with. And actually, I believe that when you pay attention to things like Myers-Briggs and DISC, that is an act of love, because it means you're not just treating people the way you think. You're paying attention to them and their style and offering them what you have to offer in a way that matches them. And the same thing with the fun and playfulness. It's an attitude. It's not just people assuming, oh, it's just a big green furry thing that's throwing balls against the wall and it's balloons, but that's more superficial. It's really, at the core, we believe that fun and play stems from a place of optimism. It stems from a place of humility and service. And so that the fun is not superficial fun. It's coming from a deep, joyous place, and that's what we're after.
That's a really interesting point about the Myers-Briggs. I remember one time I was having difficulty communicating with a person, and we had taken the Myers-Briggs, and I said, let me see what that person's style was, of communicating. And I found out that person did not like someone very excitable like I can get. Like, oh, we have to get this deadline done. And then I found out I should talk more in a calm, succinct manner. And it really worked. So you're right. Taking the time out can really make communications go much, much better.
We found we do a lot of work around appreciation, and we found the same thing as Myers-Briggs.
Oh.
For instance, some people like a public display of appreciation. They're going to love being the employee of the month. But you have other people who are more like the introverts. That's the last thing they want. And so you may think you're doing something good for them, but that makes them really uncomfortable. What they want is take them aside and say, Joanne, we just really want to thank you. Write them a thank you note. Make it personal. And so we've learned that these acts of love, or in this case fun, you really have to pay attention to who you're with and doing it in a way that makes them feel good.
That sounds really neat. one of the other principles you mentioned is optimism. I just love that whole thing about optimism. I know it makes you live longer. Let's hear about a little bit about that. How to create that in the workplace.
Yeah, Mary Sue, you're hitting on some of Evan and my favorite principles in the book. This one is dance and be optimistic, the seventh inning dance, because, for all these years, the Phanatic always is on that dugout every seventh inning, no matter what the score, and he dances. And it's really neat, I guess, being the guy in the costume to, it's the seventh inning, and sometimes, the Phillies are winning, but sometimes they're losing. And to come down the aisle and through the crowd and kind of feel the energy rise a little bit, even if the Phillies are losing. When the Phanatic's out there, the energy rises a little bit, the inning ends, and the Phanatic dances. And I generally really get the feeling that people really enjoy it, even if the Phillies are losing.
And you do a great job at that dancing, too, Tom.
Oh, thank you. Well, I always tell people, Mary Sue, the costume hides a lot of my faults when it comes to being a dancer. Thank goodness for that big belly, because it hides everything. But it's really great, to have that, and it's consistent that the Phanatic is up on that dugout every game, and I think people look forward to it. And Evan, I think it's a great example for corporate America too. I know when the people see the Phanatic, he's part of the Phillies brand, and you try to think, okay, what do people think when they see the Phanatic? And I think they think happy thoughts, and I think when they see the Phillies logo, we have lost 10,000 games in our history, but I don't think that's what people think of when they see our logo. I think they think of good times and family and the ballpark and what we do in the community. And so we put that question out there to companies, and what do people think when they see your logo on top of that letterhead? Do they have a warm feeling? Are they energized by it? Are they optimistic when they see it? So we think it's a great principle.
Now, do you teach them how to dance too?
Another part of it, Mary Sue, is the tagline of that principle is dance and be optimistic no matter what the score. Yes. And, Tara and I, our company is called Dylan Marcus. We work with executive teams. We're consultants. And our thing is we build world-class executive teams. And what we've learned is that you can't be world-class unless you have someone or some part of your culture that, regardless of what's coming at you, because business is very difficult and challenging. It's all not smiles. And so How do you have that ability to be optimistic no matter what the score? And honestly, we believe that what it means to be a great leader is you have that capacity, which is not always easy, to find optimism regardless of what's happening that day, that month, that year.
That's a great point, Evan. Businesses like life have ups and downs, so it's good to be able to turn on, a positive attitude. And, we interview a lot of positive psychologists, too, here at A Better World. And one thing they tell us is that all this good stuff that you're doing actually increases well-being, and it just makes you live longer and you feel better. So,
part of the promise of the book, is like how to get, and this isn't to promote the book. This is really about promoting love. Mm-hmm. We say that the most powerful force in the world creates great organizations. And our contention is pick any indicator of success in an organization: profitability, engagement, retention of talent, innovation, efficiency, and productivity. The thing is that when you come from love, every single one of those is improved, increased, and maximized.
Wow.
And we have so many examples of love is not just some touchy-feely concept, but it's a really strong strategy for success because it does touch every single indicator of success that you're striving to achieve.
You have an interesting example in the book about Subaru. I would love if you would share that for our listeners.
Well, Subaru kind of did what we did. Love found us. Tom and I, and my wife Tara is also, it's really the three of us. Tom and my name is on it, but it was really the three of us that worked on all of this. And, we were trying to describe something we were experiencing. Well, Subaru was working on a marketing campaign, and they went and they did focus groups of their customers. They weren't out looking for the love word. They were just, hey, what does all this have in common? And what kept coming back to them was customers saying, we love our Subaru. They heard it so much, it was like that became their thing. It was like it was all about love. And they created this love promise, which we have in the book. And the love promise is not really what you would think. A lot of it is about how they're going to treat their community. It's a very powerful brand. And so they, in all their dealerships, they started promoting this idea of the love promise.
Wow. And so people love their Subaru, huh?
Yeah, and it was kind of it was the contention we had with the book. Like, they could probably do the same thing. What creates that love? I mean, again, from a business standpoint, what could be something greater to achieve than your customers on their own saying, we love our Subaru, we love our tourney, we love our whatever, we love our church. I mean, there is, to be able to say that, and this is another thing we realized, if you think what it takes to be able to say, I love my Subaru, there's a lot that goes into that. And another point we have in the book, one of the principles, is about operational excellence. If the product and the service isn't excellent, there's no way people are going to love it. And so what we found is, you look at Southwest Airlines, Starbucks, Whole Foods, Wawa, the things that people love, these are innovative, great companies that provide great products and great service. And Tom and I say, if you're interested in mediocrity, this isn't the book or the concept for you. Love is going to bring you to a very high level of excellence and achievement.
Evan, can you share Subaru's love promise for our listeners?
Absolutely. We have it in the book, and here I'll read it. It's a beautiful thing. It's called The Love Promise. The Love Promise is a promise to do right by our community by partnering with nonprofit education, health, community, environment, and animal organizations to set Subaru apart through our deeds and the deeds of our partners, to be unlike any other car company by doing what is right and good just for the sake of doing it. I mean, how awesome is that?
Oh, awesome. You know, I wanted to ask you this question. Do you ever get the question of people say, well, you know, I really don't love my job. What advice would you give them, Tom or Evan?
Yeah, I think that's a search for everybody, Mary Sue, you know, to find that thing in life that you want to do, that you love to do, love your job. I have 3 boys. One just graduated from college, and, you know, he's finding his way. And your hope for them is they're going to find that thing that they love to do. And Evan and I talk to high school kids, we talk to college kids, and I think there's we have kind of this talk that says, find your fanatic, and, you know, what did you love to do as a kid, and, you know, what are your maybe your coaches or your parents or teachers, you know, over the years, you know, that sometimes they see it in you, and you're not sure it even exists, and sometimes there's signs that maybe that point you in the right direction. But Evan and I, you know, we acknowledge in the book that it's hard to be loving when you don't love what you're doing. That being said, you can still improve your circumstances and not go anywhere. You know, I think we're making the point, you know, certainly that when you're loving and when you're being kind, it makes you feel better. And
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
you know, if you're not an optimistic person and you're sitting behind a desk and you don't like what you're doing, you know, if you go out and do something nice for somebody, it's going to make you feel better. And one thing I'll relate back to baseball, you know, sometimes if a player is not hitting the ball and he's in an 0 for 25 slump, and, you know, it's not a very pleasant situation for that player. And a lot of times what happens is when that player starts to do the little things, you know, laying down a bunt, or maybe, you know, moving the runner along and sacrificing, you know, your at bat, you know, for the team, or maybe, you know, working on your defense and start doing the little things, it generally has an effect, you know, in the batter's box, and that player, you know, winds up actually, you know, maybe getting out of the slump because he's done the little things. So, you know, if you're at work and you don't love what you do, maybe if you do the little things and you start to notice and be kind and be part of the you know, the greater good, it might improve your situation.
That sounds like really good advice. Now, how can our listeners help you guys spread this message of love?
That's a big one, Mary Sue. Well, talking to you guys is a great start. I tell you what, I mean, you really are. I think you have such a great understanding of what Evan and I are talking about, and you're really living it, and we really appreciate that. Even Evan and I have been talking about. Well, we have a big talk this week at St. Joe's University, and we really want to have the students. Almost create a movement, around Pheel the Love, and how can they? Sure, we can give them a nice talk, but we really do want them to live the principles. So we'd love ideas on how we can, spread our message. That's for sure.
Well, you guys have got
a couple things that could. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ray.
No, go ahead. Finish, please.
A couple things that would help. One is just be more loving in the world. I mean, aside from anything directly related to us, the more, I just love the game. I just, learned about your game and what a wonderful piece that is in the world. So
thank you.
Anything that people can start being more loving in the world. I mean, we'll start telling people about your game at our talks because I think it's just a great example of, how to affect this out in the world. Obviously, if people buy the book is nice. We have a keynote that we do. We have workshops where they can bring us into organizations. We're meeting with one of our CEO clients next week because she, like you, really, she goes, you know what, this isn't just about a book. I need to bring this love into our culture. She gets it. And so the more leaders we can meet who are interested in these concepts and want some help in how to bring more love into their organizations, those are ideal people for us to meet and start working with.
Well, that's some amazing stories. I just want to make one comment before we wrap up. We have one special question to ask you as we wrap up. But before we do, I just wanted to say that I was reminded of a training session we once conducted for a customer service in a company, and we had a sort of a little bit of a odd player that was out of sync with what was going on. And she was just kind of baiting along the way, and finally she asked me, "What do you do when you find yourself where you don't believe in your company or the products that it offers?"
Yep.
And I thought, boy, am I on the spot here? And I took a chance, and I said to her, I said, do you get the Sunday paper? And she said, I do. I said, does it have a classified section? She said, yes, it does. I said, well, I would look very carefully at the next opportunity that you can find, because if you don't believe in your company, you don't believe in what you do, you better find something you can believe in, because that's what you're going to fall in love with. That's what you're going to do well. And lo and behold, within a week, she left. And she found her happiness someplace else. So, I mean, I think that's a critically important ingredient, that you have to love what you do, and you have to find it as soon as you can. So,
Ray, I'm sure you're familiar with the company Zappos.
Sure.
Oh yeah, love Zappos.
So Zappos, and if you read the guy's book, Tony Hsieh, he says the purpose of Zappos is, and we talk about this too. Part of love is having a higher purpose. His purpose isn't to sell shoes. He says it's to deliver happiness. And they have a very strong culture around this because he understands that that's what they're all about. Get this. When they start to hire new people, right, so they go through, they interview all these people, they bring you in for the first round of training. Before you take the second part of the orientation, they will pay you $2,000 to leave.
Wow.
$2,000 to leave, to not continue going on, because they understand the point you were just making. It's so critical to have the right people who really buy into your culture that to them it's cheap to give them $2,000 to let them go rather than what it would cost to have people working there that don't love them and their culture.
Absolutely. Now, in fact, as a matter of fact, we actually had Jen Lim on our show. She actually is in charge of that delivering happiness issue with Tony Hsieh, and she was on our show. If you go back into our archives, you'll see that listed alphabetically as one of the guests. You can listen to the show.
Awesome.
We also had, I think, a Conscious Capitalism with Raj Sisodia, who basically highlights the work that was done with Whole Foods.
Whole Foods.
And so we've actually worked with businesses that are doing the kind of quality work that, and that love shines through here as well. So I have to ask you this final question, and that we ask all of our guests this question. How do you hope that encouraging people to approach business, and life for that matter, with love can help make the world a better place? Evan?
I think you just stated it right there. You know, Ray, I was going to become a rabbi. I thought that was my path in life, and I didn't continue forward with it. But I look at, business sometimes gets a bad rap. But business touches every single person on the planet every day. Either you're in the business or you're receiving some type of service from the business. It's ubiquitous. So imagine that every one of those encounters, person to person, that there was another drop of love that was added to that interaction. The impact that has worldwide is huge. So business, honestly, I believe more than government, more than religion, more than any other institution, more than schools, has the ability to transform every person's lives. So imagine we're able to infuse all of those interactions with love. It's tremendous. It's enormous impact.
And Tom, how about your thoughts on how this could make the world a better place?
Ray, how am I possibly going to follow that?
Yeah, right.
Evan, hey Ray, you didn't see it, but Evan just dropped the mic right there. He just dropped the phone. No, well, actually, and I can hardly follow that, but I guess I'm in that unique position in that the Phillie Phanatic kind of gets invited to the party. It's my life, not just here at the ballpark, but the Phanatic does between 700 and 800 community appearances a year, and what I get to see is people being very selfless. People who organize, carnivals and church community groups and parades and little leagues and people who really are not thinking in themselves at that time. They put aside their concerns and their worries and their busy schedules to volunteer, just be there for other people. And I just see it everywhere, and so hopefully our message is shines a light on those people, but also maybe wakes people up to the fact that when you can do that and volunteer, you might get behind in your schedule a little bit, but it's going to make you feel good, and it's certainly going to make others feel well too and feel great too. So I think that's part of our message. But I liked what Evan said too.
Well, I like what both of you said. And by the way, let's not forget that with 700 or 800 or whatever it is, a number of these appearances of showing up for people, it comes back to what I think the famous producer Woody Allen once said. He said, "Look, 80% of life is just showing up."
That's right.
So if you're showing up like that, then that Phillie Phanatic appearance is making a profound difference. So you guys have been great guests. We really enjoyed it. We're going to try to get over to St. Joe's and see that, and we invite you guys to find out more about us. For our listeners, you can learn more about Tom and Evan's work by going to feelthelove.com. That's Pheel. Tom and Evan, thanks so much for joining us today on BetterWorldians Radio.
Well,
great. Thanks so much, guys.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, we really appreciate your help.
Oh, you're very welcome. So hang on for a minute. We're just going to wrap up the show. I want to just simply say that BetterWorldians Radio is brought to you by BetterWorldians Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to make the world a better place by encouraging the very best in everyone. Essentially, we believe in planting flowers, not just pulling weeds. So we focus on positive thinking, positive values, and positive actions. In short, our vision is to bring out the BetterWorldian in everybody so that we can all make it a better world. But we can sure use your help. Donations support our BetterWorldians Radio podcast, and they also go towards developing new features like articles, videos, blogs, and many, many more things. We need help of BetterWorldians just like you to ensure our mission's success and future. So go to BetterWorldians.com and become part of this important mission. And until next time, as I say every week, please be a BetterWorldian.